But it's Sunday. No cinemas are open today. Huh? Britain scrapped the law on the 20th. Even sports are allowed. So, wait, they really tossed out the Sunday Observance Act of 1780? Wow, movies on a Sunday, huh? What next, yeah? Dancing on Easter. Huh. Yeah, wild times. All right, I gotta go.
Headline of the month. Deputy SA leader Walter Stennes leads an internal rebellion and pays the price.
I'm Indy Neidell.
I'm Spartacus Olsson.
This is The Rise of Hitler. Welcome back to the Weimar Wire, covering all of April's alarming actions, authoritarian antics, and accelerating anxieties.
And here are this month's other important headlines. Nazi knockout in Thuringia. Wilhelm Frick, Nazi Minister of Interior and Education, toppled by a dramatic vote of no confidence.
Red Berlin. Communist demonstrators clash violently with police as the government cracks down under President Hindenburg's new emergency decree. But before we get to all that, let's briefly look back at March to set things up.
March brought that new emergency decree from Hindenburg, suspending key civil rights and fueling fears of dictatorial powers in the name of calming the streets. Adolf Hitler doubled down on his legal path, also declaring, "I am the SA," while Thuringia's Nazi-led coalition collapsed under Wilhelm Frick's heavy-handed rule.
On top of that, the proposed German-Austrian customs union outraged France, and unemployment shot past 5 million. All in all, March was anything but calm, so let's see what this month has in store.
Indy, are you forgetting something?
What am I forgetting?
Not what, where. As in, where's Hitler? What's Adolf up to this month?
Yes. Okay, let's get into it. First, let's have a look at a foreword Hitler writes for the German translation of the book La rivoluzione del fascismo, The Revolution of Fascism, by Italian author Vincenzo Maletti.
This book contains the state concept of the future, illustrated through its Italian realization. The new state idea emerged from the frontline soldier experience of the World War. It embodies the very spirit of this experience. Grand, tough, militant, class-unifying, valuing personality and achievement, and demanding everything for the national community.
He also congratulates and then instructs Dr. Joseph Goebbels, Nazi Party MP and propagandist.
As great as your work performance was, so too was your unwavering loyalty to the movement and to me personally as leader. Dr. Goebbels, I hereby task you to resolutely take charge of and carry out the purification of the movement, and for this purpose, I renew the general authority previously granted to you.
Why is there purification of the Nazi movement? Well, that brings us to the headline of the month. The Nazi paramilitary militia, the SA, is rocked by internal rebellion. Everything begins on the 1st of April, right? When Walter Stennes, leader of the Eastern SA district, reads the newspaper.
The Gruppenführer Ost Hauptmann Stennes is relieved of his duties effective April 1st, 1931. Hauptmann Stennes has repeatedly expressed views contrary to the guidelines of the Supreme SA leadership. It is therefore untenable to keep him in a position of responsibility.
Okay, let's rewind a bit. Stennes, a Great War vet, joined the Nazis back in 1927, quickly rising through the SA ranks. He felt the SA shouldn't just guard party rallies or brawl with communists. He wanted to seize power for the Nazis with a coup. By 1930, he was openly challenging Hitler's authority.
Last August, Stennes led an SA strike against party leadership. He demanded that more SA members be considered for political office and that they be paid better. It is true that the situation in the SA can be described as one of financial hardship. Many members rely on their posts for their primary income, but earn barely enough to survive.
After Hitler flat out refused, Stennes took action. On the 30th of August, his men occupied Nazi Party headquarters and the offices of Der Angriff, Goebbels' Nazi newspaper. Hitler rushed to Berlin and, after giving promises of eternal trust, money, and recognition, Stennes fell back in line. Yet the underlying tension simmered all winter. This tension centers around the current official party line dictated by Hitler, the oath to legality. In front of the German Supreme Court in Leipzig, in speeches and various articles over the last couple of months, Hitler has stressed again and again the Nazi Party's intent to gain power legally, ordering the SA to stop breaking the law.
This is far removed from the man who led a coup, the Bureau Putsch in 1923, and went to prison for it. This is precisely what Stennes and his supporters in the SA are demanding: a forceful, immediate, and illegal seizure of power through the SA. No more waiting for elections, no more biding their time.
And Stennes did not stop these demands after August last year. He continues to make them publicly this year. This is why Hitler decides to remove him from his leadership post. Given the current scrutiny the Nazi movement is under, Hitler cannot countenance having roughly a third of all SA men being led by an unpredictable revolutionary.
And this third is also growing rapidly. When Astrid took control of the SA in January this year, he commanded around 77,000 men. Just 3 months later, driven by terrible economic conditions and successful Nazi recruitment campaigns, this number has grown to 118,000, meaning that Stennes now commands nearly 40,000 men.
The SA even now outnumbers the Reichswehr, the German army. All the more reason for Hitler to act against Stennes now, lest he risk a brutal government crackdown and the outlawing of the entire organization. There is one problem. Stennes does not simply bow to Hitler's will. After reading the article, he takes immediate action.
He summons the SA leaders under his command into the capital and instructs Gausturm 15 to again occupy the party's headquarters in Hedemannstraße, barring his replacement from entering the premises.
But he doesn't stop there. He again sends men to the offices of Der Angriff, and he even publishes an issue renouncing his dismissal and spreading a declaration aimed at the Nazi leadership.
Hitler's breach of loyalty, which I still deemed impossible yesterday, has become a reality. I have ordered the SA to assume control in the provinces of Mecklenburg, Pomerania, Brandenburg, Ostmark, Silesia, and the Reich capital. The SA is to be sacrificed to the political leadership's pursuit of ministerial positions. The SA cares only about the victory of our idea in the struggle for people and fatherland. Horst Wessel and thousands of comrades must not have shed their blood in vain. We fighters were cheated of victory in 1918, 1920, and 1923. Now we are vigilant and will draw consequences. The SA marches!
He also directly attacks Hitler.
His flight from responsibility, retreating behind an apparatus of corrupt party functionaries, indulging in chaotic disorder and Byzantine tastelessness, abandoning the original clear objectives, the disgraceful double-dealing of Adolf Hitler, accustomed to Habsburg methods. Here's what the communists have to say about the whole affair.
The clash between Hitler and Stennes reflects the contradiction between the capitalist policies of the NSDAP and its working-class supporters, who took the social demagoguery seriously. All working-class supporters of the NSDAP to the KPD!
In the meantime, Hitler orders Goebbels to use any means necessary to regain control of their Berlin headquarters. And that he does. In a twist of irony, the Berlin police, literally and figuratively battered and bruised time and time again by Nazi newspapers and Nazi thugs, have to step in.
Stennes' men hold both the offices of Der Angriff and party headquarters for more than 24 hours, but with police intervention, they can be cleared from both premises. Then, Hitler makes further announcements.
A conspiracy was forged whose outbreak could lead to a severe, perhaps even final catastrophe for the entire national movement in Germany. Anyone who accepts, tolerates, or passes on orders and instructions from Stennes thereby automatically excludes himself from the National Socialist German workers' movement.
But that's not all. Hitler also expels Stennes from the Nazi Party and announces the thorough purification of the entire party, with all Stennes sympathizers put on a blacklist.
And while Stennes has written declarations of support from almost all his Eastern SA leaders, no major riots do break out. Slowly, Hitler manages to regain control. The Deutsche Reichszeitung provides insight from an alleged expert on the Nazi movement who explains why.
If Stennes, who had exceptionally great influence in northern Germany, had had sufficient funds available to protect his followers from starvation, the party would have split apart. It was not discipline, nor Hitler's leadership qualities, nor the ideological goal of the Third Reich that tipped the balance in Hitler's favor. but rather the fact that the party's lower-ranking leaders were economically dependent on Hitler, and continuing to receive their salaries was more important to them than loyalty to Stennes.
There is also sympathy for Stennes from another former Nazi who violently rebelled against Hitler, Otto Strasser. Last July, he also decided enough was enough, though for different reasons.
Like Stennes, Strasser also decried the gentrification of the movement, and he attacked elitism and corruption within the party, and insisted on abandoning any form of compromise or coalition politics.
Now, like Strasser did when he was expelled, Stennes forms his own group, the Nationalsozialistische Kampfbewegung Deutschlands, the National Socialist Fighting Movement of Germany, NSKD in short.
In the meantime, over 500 SA members are expelled in the weeks following the attempted coup, and in another twist of irony, the Hitlerites and Stennesites will face each other in the courts that they have decried as symbols of that very Weimar system they hate.
Hitler will still have to walk a fine line, using the SA for muscle while keeping them on a short leash. This month's fiasco shows that controlling these paramilitaries is no easy feat.
However, Hitler's victory also sends a strong signal. In crushing this revolt, Hitler reassures conservative elites and doubters that he is genuinely and firmly committed to a path of legality and that he can control his men.
Positive signal desperately needed after the Nazis suffer another setback this month. After the coalition in Thuringia exploded last month, Wilhelm Frick, the first Nazi ever to hold a ministerial office, is overthrown.
Yep, we have to go back yet again to Thuringia, a state that's gotten a lot of attention since we began our coverage. Just last month, we reported how the coalition there of the Nazis and other parties went up in flames.
However, the end of a coalition does not mean an end to ministerial positions. So for a while, Frick has stayed in office as Minister of the Interior and Education. But on the 1st of April, the SPD, Social Democrats, introduce a vote of no confidence to the Landtag, the state legislature.
They are counting on the Nazis' former coalition partners, headed by the German People's Party, the DVP, and the eternal enemy of the Nazis, the Communist Party, to seal Frick's fate. Before the vote begins, Dr. Wigman, a DVP MP, holds a speech.
Wigman listed in detail all the People's Party had endured during Frick's administration. The expert advisors whom Frick had brought had grown into a parallel government. Police officers and educators were dismissed. Young people were influenced according to National Socialist Party policies. The National Theater was used for National Socialist rallies, even on Sunday mornings during church hours. Certainly, much had been achieved this year, but not by the National Socialists. The National Socialists had merely cackled around the country, while others lay the eggs.
So, in short, they have their reasons. The Nazis respond.
Deputy Nazi Saukel declared the sharpest possible fight against the new government. The National Socialists will return, stepping over the dead bodies of the People's Party.
Stepping over dead bodies. That has to be a stylistic device rather than a literal threat. You know, with that oath of legality and all, right?
Yeah, that's certainly what the Nazis are saying anyway. Anyways, outside the legislature, masses of people gather. The police even have to use rubber batons to keep things orderly. Then the vote proceeds. Here is the result, as reported by the communist press.
The session was extremely turbulent. The vote passed 29 to 22. Voting in favor were the KPD, SPD, German People's Party, and State Party. Against were Nazis, the Economy Party, and the German Nationals. Afterwards, a representative of the German Nationals declared solidarity with the Nazis and announced they too would withdraw from the government.
This vote can serve as a representation of the broader German political landscape. The German National People's Party, the DNVP, as well as the Economy Party, the WP, have been moving ever more to the right, embracing Nazi rhetoric. By now, the leaders of the Nationals, Alfred Hugenberg, even echoes Hitler's demands for a Third Reich.
Of course, Hitler also takes note of these developments and publishes a letter to Frick II. Here's what he has to say about the whole affair.
No one has ever devoted themselves to a task with more dedication than you. Now, at last, the German People's Party has succeeded in Thuringia to consummate their vile betrayal of the German folk. It was a conspiratorial coalition extending from the Communist Party to the People's Party. You have fallen victim to the age-old German betrayal.
Just FYI, this is precisely the sort of rhetoric that caused the divide between the former coalition partners. Later in the month, on the 22nd, Nazi fears become reality. A minority government tolerated by the Social Democrats. But again, the vote is preceded by raised voices, shall we say. Once more, Dr. Wigman puts the Nazis in their place.
During the budget discussions, the National Socialists have the opportunity to demonstrate whether they truly wish to serve the state. Their declaration that they would reject the budget reveals that their priority is not the welfare of the nation, but rather the interests of their own party.
And then we have the vote. The vote resulted in the confirmation of the new government, with 19 votes from the three governing parties, DVP, WP, and Landbund, with abstentions. That the SPD did not easily reach the decision to support the new government by abstention was shown by the fact that of the 18 Social Democratic representatives, 5 chose to remain outside the hall.
So, in a way, we are back to January 1930. There is no government currently in Germany, national or state level, where the Nazis are part of a ruling coalition. Not a single ministerial position occupied by a Nazi party member.
Yet the Nazis, as opposed to January 1930, the Nazis are the second strongest party in Germany, and that support keeps growing. The next minister or coalition involving them seems more of a when than an if.
Tensions with the communists are also escalating in Weimar. Just as last year's Reich Communist Youth Day ended in turmoil, this year's gathering brings similar disruptions.
Last year, Bloody Easter in Leipzig saw communist youth clashing violently with police, resulting in the deaths of both officers and demonstrators, and with accusations of provocation and brutal retaliation. The streets ran with blood as both sides proclaimed victory and mourned their fallen, foreshadowing the political battles to come.
That is why this year, any and all marches, protests, or gatherings are prohibited from the start. But the authorities are aware that the communists do not always listen to their provisions.
The working youth held their youth day without regard for prohibitions and emergency decrees. In most cases, the police, who are on the highest alert, arrived too late.
But while the police may arrive too late in some cases, they are ready and waiting in many. Mass arrests follow, and the communists comment.
Hundreds of thousands of youth experienced during this Easter the disgraceful fascist terror policies, which overshadowed by 100-fold everything that working-class youth endured during the Wilhelmine era. Across all of Germany, rubber clubs and rifles stood as the symbols of the ruling regime.
And the police tactic, mass arresting everyone marching under a communist banner, soon pays off. Already on the 7th, there are noticeable changes. The attempted youth demonstration in northwest Germany and Braunschweig saw very low participation. Barely 1,000 communist supporters could be mobilized. The mass arrests continuously carried out since last Thursday due to participation in banned demonstrations had a deterrent effect.
But to reach that effect, it took a lot of arrests. In Braunschweig alone, over the Easter holidays, 437 communists are arrested. Most are let go soon after, but the arrests nevertheless undermine the revolutionary spirit.
Soon, the communists declared,
the working class demands the immediate release of the 1,000 arrested young workers throughout the Reich, including the more than 200 arrested in Berlin.
But let's not forget why the police can do this. Hindenburg's emergency decree from last month gives local authorities enormous latitude to ban political events they deem a threat and even suspend constitutional rights along the way.
The message is clear. The state is willing to use force, harshly and preemptively, to rein in chaos on the streets. But Germany isn't alone in navigating turbulent times. Let's widen our lens now, turning to other parts of the globe in this week's Global Wire. Let's start with Spain. On April the 14th, King Alfonso XIII goes into exile after municipal elections show what he calls mass support for republicanism.
In reality, though, the monarchy still carries great sympathy throughout the country, especially in rural areas.
A provisional government led by Niceto Alcalá Zamora proclaims the Second Spanish Republic to cheering crowds in Madrid, raising hopes for democratic reforms, but also stirring fears of major unrest.
In the United States, 9 black youths, the Scottsboro Boys that we already mentioned last month, are on trial April 6th to 9th in Alabama on rape charges.
With an all-white jury and perfunctory defense, 8 are sentenced to death, prompting nationwide protests over what really seemed to be trumped-up charges. Communist and civil rights groups mobilized to appeal these verdicts, turning this into a flashpoint for racial injustice in Depression-era America.
And on a lighter note, on April 2nd, teenage pitcher Jackie Mitchell, a girl, makes headlines by striking out Babe Ruth and Lou Gehrig in an exhibition game. While some dismiss it as merely a publicity stunt, and despite her contract being quickly voided, it's already causing quite a stir, raising questions about women's future in sports and leaving baseball fans buzzing.
Oh. Well, that is it for the Global Wire. Now, onto the Weimar Wire Political Indicator, brought to you by Time Ghost. While the Nazis and the Communists both face setbacks, internal strife, and police crackdowns, the landscape has not changed. The economic situation is still terrible and ripe for polarization.
So those parties' trend haven't changed either. Both are still up, although perhaps less so than last month. On the other hand, the establishment parties are still down, though again, perhaps less than last month.
And yet again, we are confronted with many important questions as April draws to its close.
Has Hitler managed to rein in the rebellious SA, or is this just the start of internal Nazi strife?
Will Thuringia's new leadership keep the state stable, or will the fallout from Frick's exit spark even more chaos?
Who will the next Nazi minister be? And where will he hold office?
Did the crackdown on Communist Youth Day truly dent the revolutionary spirit, or is the state fanning the flames of something far bigger? I have one final announcement to make. We at the Weimar Wire, okay, after these questions, right? We at the Weimar Wire are ready to answer some of your questions. Post them in the comments below, and the 3 or 4 most liked, so obviously like the ones you like, right, will be dealt with in an upcoming special edition of the Weimar Wire, Out of the Bullpen.
A huge thanks to the Time Ghost Army for making our work possible. If you want to join this mission, head over to timeghost.tv or patreon.com.
Weimar Wire, signing off. Excelsior!